Liz here, and I'm excited to be with you in the next video in our series. This one is about image bearing. What is it? How does it connect to creativity? Let's explore that. So image bearing. The idea is in Genesis 1, and we see there that God created the heavens, the earth, and humanity. And when it came to us as humans, He created us in His image, in His likeness. And so it's that idea of being able to reflect who He is in our world, that's image bearing, right? And so the intersection with creativity then is that if He is creator, then it would follow that as reflections of Him, we are creative. So there might be a few places in your life that you have actually been creative and, haven't given yourself credit for that. So think about it. And also, I think this is the reason why creative people are often so attractive to us, right? Because they're expressing that piece of the fullness of our humanity, the fullness of what we're created to be, and that is creative. So on that point also, we don't want our creative products, if you will, our creative endeavors to then become our identity. So I am an artist, I am a singer, right? Those are some of the ways we talk about those things. And it's not wrong, but if your identity gets caught up in it, then you're off to a bad start, right? And it's really hard to be free in that if your identity isn't firmly grounded in Christ. And so as followers of Jesus, we want to make sure that we're putting our identity there in Christ. And a really good example of that is the story of Prince. So he's a musician, he was known as Prince, and eventually became known as the artist formerly known as Prince. So there's a piece there about identity, and there's some truth there, right? Because we're image bearers, and this creativity is something that is a part of us then, but it's not our full identity, and we can't lean too hard into it that way. So then what are we going to do with it? So I think that Exodus 35 is a really great example of how creativity and God's Spirit and image bearing and living in community all intersect together. So in Exodus 35, we hear about a man named Bezalel, and he's one of the first mentions of someone being filled by God's Spirit, which I think is pretty awesome. And he was filled with God's Spirit to do a task, and the task was build the tabernacle. So he had skills and understanding and knowledge and ability to both do the work that needed to be done, the craftsmanship, right? And also the ability to teach others. So they get to work and they're using their skills and creativity and they're building this tabernacle, which is this space where people can come and meet with God. And I just think that's so beautiful to have this idea that God is with us in it, right? They're filled by the Spirit. We have gifts and talents that He has given us that we can develop and then put to good use in building something, in this case the tabernacle, but as a concept, spaces that create experiences where maybe people can see God in a new way, where we can engage in relationships in healing ways, right? And so I love that. And then if we hop into the New Testament, thinking about Ephesians 2:10, that we are God's workmanship in Christ Jesus, and created for good works that he prepared in advance for us to do. And so again, it points back to this idea that with everything that we are, we can be focused on that mission, right? This idea of creating spaces, creating community, and reflecting God into our society and to the people around us. So for me, we can branch it off into two spaces. Into spaces where it's unknown, right? Where you're standing on the edge of something and the story isn't written yet, and the canvas hasn't been touched with paint yet, and I don't know what my next job is, and I don't know what my next move is, and it's this unknown. And so for me, when I go back to Genesis and I think about the first couple of verses where God's Spirit hovered over the water and the void and just hovered, right? It's that space where I don't know what's going to happen next. And then you wait for it, and boom, life, right? And so his Spirit is with me and in me in those spaces that are the unknown. I don't know this yet. I don't know what might come of this. And then the other avenue that this can go is creativity within what feels stuck in life, right? What might be in a rut. Could be a relationship, could be your role at work. So what's stuck in a rut, and how can thinking of that situation in new ways bring beauty, bring life, and reflect God's character there? So in both cases, whether I find myself on the edge of the unknown, and then the next step is creating a new reality for myself, right? What am I going to do next? Or if it's like a rut where I have a friendship where things are tough, or I don't know how to communicate what I need to clearly. In both those arenas, this idea of being able to reflect God, to think creatively and not get paralyzed in that moment, and know that he's with us in it, right, by his Spirit, and lean into him and know my identity in Christ, that brings so much more freedom and so much more beauty in this idea of creativity in all of my life, rather than me narrowly putting it into, the arts, like we talked about in the last video. So, last thought for you. What are some places in your life that maybe you have been creative and you haven't really thought of it that way before? And number two, what are some places in your life that you could use some creativity? So think about those for a while, and our next video with Adam is going to lean into that a little bit more with the idea of expression and how we express creativity. So until then, take care, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.